Rolling down the street in my 6'4". Where we did this last week? Like that, right? That's where we put it. Everything hurts. What's up? We're Dashboard Disciples. That's Matt. I'm James. We are another episode of Letters to the Church by Francis Chan. We're going to be stepping into chapter 6 now, right? Chapter 6, which
seven.
Chapter 7, which is crucified.
Lay behind
Crucified.
the stone, live to die. Checked it out. Above all, yeah. Okay, sorry.
It's okay. Dang it! Now it's stuck in my head. So,
did you ever sing it in Spanish?
Crucified.
Did you ever sing it in Spanish?
No, I didn't.
Ooh.
Oh man.
Oh, that's a treat. That one's a treat.
Songs in Spanish always get me.
You go listen to it. It's pretty good.
Hey, take me to the throne room.
I'm telling you.
No. So we're doing Letters of the Church by Francis Chan. We're on chapter 7, Crucified. We're 4 chapters away from the end, guys. So be on the lookout on our website, on our Facebook page, for an announcement of our Letters to the Church gathering. We'll be putting that out shortly. Of course, obviously this week there has been a heavy uptick increase in our area
Yeah.
Concerning COVID-19. A lot of churches that had previously opened reclosed and went to online worship again.
More importantly, Bill Miller's closed their dining room again.
Bill Miller's closed. Man,
that's rough.
Fast food barbecue for the win. But so that kind of puts a damper on what our plans might be in regards to gathering physically.
But we'll figure it out.
But we'll figure it out. Whether we'll throw out a Zoom shout out, we can get on and worship together. If you're a worship leader or know a worship leader, we're looking for a worship leader, someone who will, work for free. Someone who would like to lead us in 2 or 3 worship songs as we plan the gathering, and just to worship with us together. We'll talk about what we learned from this book, and then be on the lookout for season 3 of Dashboard Disciples. Again, you can find us all of that stuff on dashboarddisciples.godaddyscience.com. There you can even learn how to become a team member, a Patreon, for as little as $5 a month. There is some benefits, swag that comes with that, things like that. And then check out our site. We put out some new shirts, some new gear, some new swag that you can purchase for a few bucks. That helps.
Small fee. That
helps us increase our reach and helps us increase what we're doing as Dashboard Disciples. I think my favorite one is Grace Ain't Free Unless It's KJV. And has anyone heard from Matthias?
Yes.
So check it out. But yeah, so let's get to our episode. Let's get down and dirty with it, man. So Crucified. What did you pick up?
Dude, I guess I should have seen this chapter coming, because if you're going to talk, I guess, Christianity, inevitably you do have to get to suffering. As much as people don't talk about it, it is a part of Christianity. So, I think I kind of liken suffering, and when we talk about it in the American sense, I kind of look at it kind of almost as if it's a muscle. And so Americans don't have good muscle tone when it comes to suffering. I think it's still there, but we're not jacked up. That muscle's not jacked up or really all that compared to our friends in China or whatever else.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it's not happening here. I think it's an annoyance. I think most of our suffering may be annoyances or inconveniences, but maybe we need to talk about it in light of, I guess, where we're currently at today. I don't know. Have we, in your opinion, have we reached that suffering for our faith threshold yet?
No.
I agree.
I don't. In all honesty, I think that when it comes to American suffering, we don't know how to suffer well. And I'm not saying that suffering doesn't happen, because it does. I mean, I grew up in an inner city neighborhood, and I mean, not the worst one in the United States, mind you, but an inner city neighborhood that you could see the poverty in the area. You could see the suffering. I mean, and I'm not talking about, there's Section 8 housing and blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about, like, you could see the drug addicts and the homeless, in the downtown area of our city. You could see people suffering. You could see grandparents and mothers and even fathers, talking about how they're going to make the next rent, or you could see a social injustice even happening in those areas. So I'm not saying that Americans don't know how to suffer, but they don't know how to suffer well. And
was it spiritual suffering though that you were seeing? Suffering for faith?
No,
sake?
it was just general suffering.
Yeah.
As in, we live in a broken world, But I mean, I think, and I'm kind of getting at that. It's the reason we don't know how to suffer well is because when it comes to even just the regular physical suffering, we don't know how to suffer well. So, I mean, mind you, spiritual suffering, like we haven't even had that conversation yet, And so I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, the physical suffering in the world or in the United States is done poorly because we define our success and our life, or the success in our life, based on how little we suffer. I.e., God must have a shining light on me if I suffer less. If all of my bills are paid, if I have a good home environment, my house is, like if I'm financially, physically, and mentally and everything stable, and I have no problems in the world, then God loves me, and or I'm if I don't believe in God, then I'm just successful, and if I suffer, then there must be a problem. Very much the Job's friends mentality.
Yeah.
Like, you're suffering, i.e., there must be something you're doing wrong.
Right.
And so then when that translates into spirituality in general, even in those inner city places in the United States, or those low income places in the United States, where that translates into spiritually in general is that these people latch onto a Jesus who's going to get them out of poverty. They latch onto this religion that's going to get them back what they generationally lost or whatnot, and thus Jesus, the only way I can show how amazing Jesus is by increasing myself.
Yeah.
And then if I don't, then I either lose my faith or dismiss that Jesus.
Yeah, and so then matters aren't helped when those who are in an authority position, be it a parental role, maybe pastoral role, whatever role it may be that exerts influence over another. We even go so far as to shield suffering from others. We'll take on a burden before we will ever make our children take on a burden, or our congregation. We will take the brunt of the suffering, and to our discredit, and it messes with our mental health. If we're not, if we are suffering together, then I think that actually helps our mental health, as opposed to us going in it alone and shielding that away.
So, like, are you talking about like us as ministers absorbing other people's suffering, or hiding our own suffering?
I think it's more. It can be both, but I would say I think the overall general sentiment is, the overall general sentiment would be that our idea is to protect. That is our instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Our instinct is to protect, and so in doing so, we create a shelter. As opposed to letting the realities just hang out and have that be all out there, and it may even hurt those that we love, but maybe in the long run they're better for being exposed to the suffering, as opposed to just rolling the dice and thinking we can just handle it all. It creates a God complex in us. It puts us in a very prideful position to think we can handle all that, as opposed to just being open and honest and letting that hang out.
Well, I think ignoring suffering or trying to hide suffering goes back to us as immature Christians trying to defend God. Trying to don't it's kind of like when you have a friend that you're trying to set up your other friend with, like for me, like if I knew a girl, then I'm trying to set her up with Matt over here, but I'm telling Matt is this girl's great qualities, and not the fact that she's actually a real human being that isn't perfect.
Yeah.
All for the sake of them meeting, because I don't want Matt to know that she doesn't have a car or something. You know what I mean? Or like, or she's been divorced once or whatever. I don't want Matt. I'm gonna just share all the good qualities, and none of the fact that she's human and has been through life.
Yeah.
And I think we have a tendency of doing that with God, where we absorb the suffering in the world because I don't want you to think that God can't. I don't want you to think that God isn't able. I don't want you to think that God doesn't care, when in reality, if we suffered well alongside the people, if we walked people through their suffering and also walked out loud our own suffering, we would see God's glory more clearly. I think of, was it 1 Corinthians 2:9, or is it 9:1? I don't remember. Or I know it's in. Man, I can't. It's one of my favorite scriptures, and it just won't pop into my mind right now. But it's therefore I will rejoice all the more gladly in my weakness, so that Christ's strength will rest upon me.
Yeah, 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians. There you go.
It's in 2 Corinthians.
But I think about that where it's like, I'll boast all the more gladly in my weakness.
Yeah.
And I think it's important if we want Americans to learn how to suffer well, then we need to boast in our weakness, and not just our emotional, I need Jesus, but boast in our weakness as in being transparent with the fact that in this world you will have suffering.
Yeah.
And learning how to walk through that. So that brings us into I guess the next big topic of this chapter, which is really the first one that he kind of knocks out of the park just right off the bat, where he talks about being an audience of Jesus and being a follower of Jesus.
Yeah, so he's talking about I think it's Jesus. A lot of people in the U.S. view Jesus as a great example to follow, but they fall short of actually then going and following it. So I know of this. It's one of my old bosses, actually, one of the guys I went to seminary with. he had graduated from the seminary, and then like we didn't actually have classes together, but he graduated from the seminary like a few years before me, and then he was then working at the seminary as I think like a rep or some admissions rep. And anyway, I ended up working under him, helping him with admissions, and he began to tell me that at his church, the way they handle new believers is that they say, look, this is what it means to be a Christian. It's denying yourself, it's following Christ. Is this something you're up to do? Like, legitimately, it's almost as if they sit them down and say and sign an agreement. It's almost as if they have a formalized, like, almost marriage ceremony to Christ. And I don't know if it's is that formalized, but it's almost as if it's that opportunity for that individual to individually count the cost. And I don't know if there's a new believers class that does that anywhere here in America, where they actually make it almost like marriage counseling almost with Christ.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and shout out to you, Daniel Martin. I don't know if you'll ever see this, but he's an associate pastor at a house church in Abilene, last I looked, and this is how they handle new believers. And
I mean, that's straight freaking amazing, dude.
Yeah,
like, cause
and
there's, I mean, really, I don't think anybody has publicly said this outside from maybe your friend, but it is a marriage. I mean, like, being a follower of Jesus is like a marriage, and oftentimes we downplay that. We almost it's almost comparative to normal American church membership is almost comparative to like a Costco membership.
For sure. Yeah.
You know, like, or Sam's Club, where it's like, I signed up and I pay my fees and you give me all these cool in-club perks.
For sure.
And that's not at all what being a Christian is. It's not at all what being a follower is. I mean, being a follower is in itself a marriage to Jesus, to follow him fully. You know, and I think that, you know, we navigate, there's some extremes where they do view that as a marriage, but it's an emotional marriage.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in love with Jesus as long as I have this emotional tug to the cross, you know, and so we create church services and worship nights that draw emotional reactions. And then you have the other very intellectual side where we create church services that cater to our intellect. When in reality it's really both.
So yeah, it is both. And the thing about, I mean, go through the marriage vow, rich or poor. I haven't done it yet, so I don't know it. No. I mean, rich or poor.
You officiated my wedding.
Yeah, I know. I know. What is it? Rich or poor, suffering. You
gonna put me on the spot, Matt?
Well, your wife is watching. No, so no pressure. But it's rich or poor, in sickness and health. It's all these things. Like, it's supposed to be the good times and the bad times. Yeah. And so this idea that we were talking about when it comes to suffering is that it's going to come naturally just along the way. Our reaction then is how we're going to handle it, essentially.
Well, and to that note, there was a conversation that I had years ago where it was like, you know, when we make those marriage vows, i.e., you know, I'm talking about the physical husband and wife marriage, you know? We make those marriage vows, oftentimes we say for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, right? We oftentimes only think about the health and the for richer part. We don't, actually ever take into account how much we're poor or in sickness actually means.
Yeah.
We never take into account like what for poor could actually mean.
So you mean you're not counting the cost?
Exactly. And it's like,
yeah.
and I mean, if we're not counting the cost in our physical marriages, in our marriage to Christ, I mean, we're not. I don't think churches and believers legitimately count the cost right now.
What Francis Chan says is there are millions of men and women who have been taught that they can become Christians and it will cost them nothing. When in reality, it should cost you not everything. I don't think necessarily everything, but it should be a discernible. There should be a discernible cost to you, for sure.
And and I think the issue behind all of that though is we also mask it with this like God's not dead Christian patriotism, thinking like, oh well, I'm gonna stand for Jesus, I'm gonna stand and that prayer, you can't infringe upon my right to pray publicly, or you can't infringe upon my right to carry a Bible, you can't, XYZ, you know what I mean? Like, we oftentimes will use that. I call it Christian patriotism. Maybe there's a more technical term for it.
I think that's pretty good.
But it's like we say that we basically create a situation where we're being persecuted. And so like we set up a situation and then call it persecution, and then we say, well, we're going to stand for our faith. So I'm counting the cost because I'm okay with losing all my friends for the sake of Jesus.
I'm okay with getting a fine.
I'm okay with getting a fine. I'm okay with, I'm okay with, telling somebody that I'm allowed to pray in schools or whatnot.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, well, what if God calls you to lose your house? What if God leads you to
quit your job with a 6-figure salary?
Quit your job with a 6-figure salary. What if God leads you to cancer?
Yeah.
Have you truly counted the cost? I had this. There was this sermon at. Well, I'm sure he'll never hear this, but his name is Chris Brown, and he's at North Coast Church up in Escondido, California, which is north of San Diego. And this sermon stuck with me, and it's stuck with me ever since he preached it back in April of 2017. And he said, what if, when Jesus called us to go to the ends of the earth, what if the ends of the earth meant stage 4 cancer in a hospital room? Because that's the only way that your doctor that is caring for you, your team of doctors and nurses, you are the only gospel they're ever going to hear.
It's good stuff.
Like, what if your ends of the earth is suffering that cancer so that they can hear the gospel, because they'll never set foot in a church and they're tired of listening to their uncle telling them how much they need Jesus.
Yeah.
But they see how well you suffered through the cancer all the way to the end.
Yeah. And I think of the scriptural example. The first time we hear of Barnabas in Acts, it's at the end of chapter 4, where he sold a piece of land and he laid it at the apostles' feet, because that's what he thought he had to do. He felt so inclined. It was very discernible that he was making his faith cost him something. Now, we don't got to go out of, like, that's what he felt God told him to do, and he was obedient to that. So could we be as obedient right then and there? Could we follow that same level of obedience and do it in suffering as well?
And I mean, that's something that, like, often, gets me is like oftentimes we will say as believers, I don't think there's not one believer. If I went to church on Sunday, or granted if the church was meeting physically right now because COVID, but if I went down our directory list and called every single member of our church and said, would you give everything to follow Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
They've been taught and trained over their entire life to say yes.
Yeah.
Right? Now, and I mean that's great and all. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one thing to say, and some of them, no, I'm not trying to say this to downplay anybody in my church or any church, because some of them have had to count the cost. I mean, that's just true. That's just the truth,
Mm-hmm.
There have been many believers, especially that I know in our church membership, that have had to count the cost. But unfortunately, those numbers are fewer and far in between. And as time continues to progress, it's becoming less and less. People don't know how to count the cost. It's a prayer that they say that they're not confronted with the true depth or the true cost of following Jesus until months, years, sometimes even decades later.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that we have to, I guess, do better on. Because there is going to, like I said, there is a cost behind following Jesus.
Yeah.
It is, yes, grace is free, but experiencing heaven on earth, and truly following him does come up. Grace is free, but it comes at a sacrifice. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
I think I know what you're getting at.
I'm trying to say it the right way, but I can't. So if you're listening out there, it's in here. It's in my head.
Yeah, so grace is free, but it's hard to accept it, I guess. Mm-hmm. in so many ways.
Well, yeah, the grace given is free. The grace accepted comes at a cost.
Yeah, for sure. Something else that kind of was interesting to me that stuck out was this process of suffering, this process of surrender. What's going on?
Go ahead.
This process of surrender from God. It's interesting because, all right, let me start over so you can get that easier on the edit.
Okay.
Something else that kind of got me about surrendering and this whole idea of surrender and all that is how we describe that in the American church as, and Francis Chan talks about this, as a process. Whereas Francis Chan, he said he went to a church in Iraq that said, and this guy from Iraq came and saw the American churches. He says, what you describe as this process of surrender as a lifelong process, we say it's a prerequisite at our church in Iraq. And that one, I guess that really stuck out big to me because whereas we want to say, oh, I'm slowly giving this over to God, or like it's all this, and it's like, no, wait. You mean you need a process in which you can do this? I mean, it's like no, like surrender is a choice, and you're allowed to have those internal struggles and all those other things, but you resolve yourself to saying, no, I'm gonna give myself to Christ, and I am going to mess up along the way, but it's not something I'm slowly doing. It's something I am choosing to do right now, and let the chips fall where they may. I think it's a much more powerful thing to say, I surrender completely to God and let the chips fall where they may, versus I'm slowly surrendering, God. I'm kind of just feeling this out. I'm in a season. This is the spiritual way of putting it. I'm in a season of waiting, and it's like, no, this is common sense. Jesus very clearly says, you follow him. It's not, I'm slowly giving this this addiction over, or I'm slowly giving or I'm slowly learning to forgive or whatever. It's like, no, you saying, no, I'm making the choice to forgive. I'm making the choice to get over this addiction. And if I mess up along the way, I mess up along the way. But it's not that I'm half-heartedly giving myself into it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be resolved from the get-go to say, no, I'm surrendering to God. And then if there is any, and then if I mess up along the way, then there's grace there.
Yeah.
But this half-heartedness,
well, yeah, because
it's not counting the cost. It's half-heartedly giving something.
Yeah, it implies that, like it's...
I have my off-ramp.
Exactly. It implies the off-ramp. This is too much.
Yep.
Like, this is too much. I'm gonna this is as far as I'll go, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Whereas if surrender is a prerequisite, then I can sit back and go, dang, I still got all this mileage to cover.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, again, that goes back to the way that it goes back to a cultural thing.
Yeah.
It is a you're in or you're out idea and mindset, but it goes back, and not just a cultural thing, but it goes back to churches trying to honestly fill their pews.
Yeah.
Trying to make sure that you're winning more winning more bees with honey or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I understand that there is a point where it's like, I mean, do things with grace and with honor, with respect,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we need to be out there Bible thumping and dropping the hammer. But there is a level of, you bring them in with grace and love, and then you say, choose who you're going to serve. The truth. You know it was so I'm in the middle of actually kind of trying to write a discipleship 101, probably year-long curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say I'm in the process of it, I mean I've written a third of the first lesson. I wrote out the skeleton at 2:00 in the morning a couple days ago, and I'm like, this thing might take me years to write. I'm going to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably will come at erasing the entire thing and starting all over again a couple times.
Sure.
That's how it goes, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that I was writing in this discipleship 101 course is this idea that came to mind was an experience that I had years ago, and it's something that I actually taught to a class of new believers.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially what I told them was, it was almost like a divisive comment that I made where I said, basically, if it would be much easier to not be a Christian.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what I told the classroom. I was like, it would be so much easier to not be a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I could do whatever I wanted without those moral without that moral feeling that you get, guilt, that moral guilt that you get from, whether it's drinking however much I want without feeling any sort of remorse, personal guilt. I mean, aside from, feeling like crap the next day, or sleeping with whoever I wanted to, or doing whatever I wanted to. If I didn't have those moral things that were keeping me from, I guess the bad, life could be so much more fun.
For sure.
But then I finished that thought with saying, but the fact of the matter is that regardless of whether or not I would choose to believe it, Jesus Christ is who he said he was. You know, he is the Messiah. He is God in the flesh, you know?
Yeah.
He is Savior. And I know that internally beyond a shadow of a doubt. Like, I know that in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing that I can do to disprove that, you know? And people have tried, you know, like, but I'm a nerd, and Ravi Zacharias was my homeboy, and, you know, like, I loved reading theology and apologetics. I cannot disprove the existence of God.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have been proven the existence of God. And I have been proven that Jesus is the Messiah. You know, I have been, these are things that I know without a doubt. But with that being said, so that leaves me at this conclusion that even if I wanted to not be a Christian, I would have to walk away knowing that. Mm-hmm. I'd have to walk away knowing that I saw the truth and I denied it.
Yeah, and I think so many people that we know that are encountered with that truth and try to walk away, they're miserable as they do it, and their life is continually miserable.
Yeah. Because
that tension is still there, and it really gets at people. And so when they then come to us and they're all like wanting advice or wanting this or wanting that, there's not a whole lot we can say to them, because it's like, dude, you know the truth. It's just a matter of you surrendering, mm-hmm. like truly giving into it, getting over your pride, mm-hmm. getting over what people have done to you, getting over whatever.
Mm-hmm. It's like, it's not a little in and a little out, which is the American surrender.
Yeah.
Like, let me get my toes wet as I make my way into the waves. This is like you got dropped in from a helicopter.
Yeah.
You know, you got to let go. You got to make the decision. I'm in. Sink or swim. And because, like, in knowing that and going, but I know the truth, and thus I cannot deny that Jesus is the Messiah, also left me with but I also cannot deny that I'm not perfect, I'm not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot deny that I'm not perfect. Is that correct?
I don't know, but I got what you're saying. Yeah.
Cannot deny that I'm not perfect, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But now from that standpoint, I have to realize that I have a long way to go to glory.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
Versus me going, well, I'm just going to put my feet in a little bit, and if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. You know, that's
if it hurts, it's like something that we're trying on, and it's not something we're fully giving into.
That's the difference between that's the difference between going all in and marrying the girl, or just living with her.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
for sure.
And let's just see if it works itself out.
So then there's sort of two sides to it. There's that side where it's like, am I getting in there? And then there's the job of the existing Christian to be able to just, in accountability, call them out and say, no, you're full of crap. Ooh, am I supposed to say that on this dashboard?
You're good.
You're full of it. So you need to decide whether you're in or out. And we got to have the boldness to step up and do that in all those kind of things. And
very much a choose ye this day whom you shall serve. That's the KJV.
Yeah.
Choose this day who you will serve.
Yeah, and no, it's a good example, because I mean, I felt like he put that in the nicest way possible. Joshua.
Yeah.
He put that in the nicest way possible. And he could have said, look, you guys are godless. We've been wandering in this desert. Get in the promised land right now. I'm done with you people. Like he's like, I've seen enough of it, and like but no, he had a little bit of kindness behind what he did. Something we could all, I guess, sort of use.
Yeah.
But notice he didn't care what the reaction was going to be. he just said, look, this is what it is. This is the choice before you. You choose either life or death. You choose the God of the Amorites in whose land you're living, or you choose Yahweh. That is the choice before you. Mm-hmm. And it's not complicated. It's really that simple. You're going to choose to follow Christ, or you're not going to follow Christ. And for us to have the boldness to honestly make that a very black and white issue. Don't try to make it this sort of gray area. Make it very clear. Look, if you don't want to do this, then you're just not ready to follow Christ. And so, you know what? I bid you Godspeed. Have fun with how you want your life to be, and let that be that. And I think it's very biblical to actually go there and say that, and to not fall at the altar of other people's opinion and how that's going to make you look in the other end.
Well, and commitment equals accountability.
For sure.
I mean, like, if you're like, well, I'm trying. Try all you want. Like, I want you to suffer well with us. You know, like, man, I just keep making this mistake. I don't know if I can. That is okay. You know, I'm not okay right now. That is okay. You know, I'm mad at God. That is okay. You know, but if you're committed, like I am a believer, I'm walking with the Lord, you know, I've chosen to walk with Him, thick or thin.
Yeah.
Then I can sit and hold you accountable and say, yeah, dude, I know it sucks, but you committed to this.
Yeah.
We're gonna see this through together.
Yeah.
You know, that is, you and I began the marathon, and you're lagging behind and you're getting cramps. As long as I know you're not going to quit, in your heart you're not going to quit. Your mind can tell me you want to quit all the whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in your heart you've decided not to quit. Then when I start dragging you along, you're going to do your best to keep up.
Yeah.
You know, like at least I know we're in it together.
Yeah, and we got to have that real commitment into it, because if we do anything else other than push them and just say, hey, like, you got this, it's okay, I know you're trying, but it's okay, just keep on going, keep doing this, keep following Christ, don't give up, all this, all that. It's going to be easy to go and want to hang out with friends, go bar hopping, go do this, go do that. It's going to be easy to do all the stuff that this world is bombarding you with, but there's a greater good for you to achieve and to keep going on in following Christ. And if we are, that's what it really looks like. That's when it talks about, that's when it really gets to loving someone. That's true definition of love right there, to just keep sticking with it, just keep going with it. That's how you show unconditional love, the same kind of love that Christ showed us on the cross, that to keep going, keep pushing them. I think it's the same kind of love that Jesus showed to his apostles in his time here on earth. He dealt with all their stupidity, all of their can I be on your right, can I be on your left in the kingdom. He dealt with all that and he got past all of it, but he stuck with them, and that was the point. And because he showed that he was willing to stick with them, that they were then able to have boldness so many years later to pick up the mantle where he left off. And so we always try to say, how are we going to affect the next generation of believers? How do we do that? I think in a sense Jesus showed us, it's doing life, sticking with them, sticking with it, sticking with people, and at the right time, God will raise up that next generation, and you will. It's what John the Baptist said: "He must increase, I must decrease." It's all these. That's John 3:30, I believe, where he was like, "Okay, it's time for me to go to the background." God will in time raise up that person. But in the meantime, show that sacrificial love, show and keep going to it, even in the midst of the suffering. The fact that they have you there, or even in the midst of them continually doing the same sin or whatever, the fact that you have them there and you're walking them through it is only going to make them stronger, to where eventually they're like, okay, I finally get it. I got this. I'm ready. I'm ready to take on the world. I'm ready to do whatever, you know. But we just fall so short as a church of just not having that mentorship, not going there and willing to be there no matter what. And if we do anything else, Francis Chan says that we are catering to people's desires, and we're ultimately catering to their sin. And so it's just something. It's a very fine line that we gotta be careful with, and run after.
For sure. I mean, if we are not focused on someone's commitment, or even in ourselves being committed, then there is almost no point to turn the page. There's no point
to being that Christian.
There's no point to, honestly, there's no point to church attendance.
Yeah.
There's no point to tithing. There's no point, unless you're trying to do it for your own sake and your own moralistic pleasure.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, there's no point to reading scripture. There's no point to, if you're not committed.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're not, you know, you got to be committed to something. You know, I mean, because even to go, well, I want to read the Bible to maybe understand God more. You know, like, then commit, commit in faith.
Yeah.
You know, because even like, you know, at one point, the atheist Lee Strobel said, "I'm reading the Bible to disprove God." You know, like, I'm committing to something. You can't have one foot in and one foot out.
Yeah.
Now, there is a lot more in this chapter that I don't even think we scratched the surface on, i.e., suffering, choosing, you know, pursue God, pursue Jesus, not suffering, pursue people, not suffering, because we only scratched the surface on suffering, and we spent a lot of time in the commitment. But honestly, this content was really good, and we're kind of running out of time. What do we say we do part 2 to chapter 7?
Let's do it.
All right, so check out part 2 to chapter 7 next week, and so we're gonna continue on this chapter. So that actually adds another week to the season, but I'm okay with that, because I don't want to leave this chapter. I hate leaving a chapter half done. So we're gonna do part 2 of chapter 7 next week on Dashboard Disciples. All right, guys. We're gonna take off for now. Again,
like, subscribe, go. And if you're on YouTube, turn on post notifications. Share us with everyone. Go check out our website and all that good stuff.
Yep. Wednesday we will have the official podcast up on our regular Facebook site, or the public Facebook site, and that'll be done on Facebook Premiere sometime Wednesday, and then also on Wednesday will be this episode on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Again, like, share, subscribe, and then consider becoming a Patreon. All right.
See ya. Adios, amigos.
The easiest job for a musician in the world is to be the guitar player for like a cumbia or like Spanish group, because if you notice, all they go is all you have to know is the upbeats. Chop, 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 and like the basses too. Boom, 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 boom,
Boom, boom, boom,
boom, boom, boom, boom. I mean, that's like, the job doesn't get any easier than that.